Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 204. Now, where we left off last time is we had just gotten the icons working again for our game. So when we open up a chest, we see some icons. And of course, if we open up our inventory window, we see them get added. The next, I want to start working on our character. And when we switch weapons, the way we have it set up right now is it has all three weapons attached, and it just changes them according to the mesh that's shown according to what item have equipped. We don't want these anymore. We want to start instantiating the weapon mesh that we need. And well, I'm going to clean up some of this debug too, as we don't really need all of this. So let's go ahead and just comment these out. This one here I'm actually just going to get rid of. I added that in the last one. And let's come up. There's one about path that I believe I added. Well, here, I remember where I added it. It was right here. Oops, sorry. It was right above here, yeah. And I'm just gonna delete it. I don't need that anymore. And that should pretty much clean up all the debug messages we're getting. I just like to keep it fairly clean, so I'm only getting the debug messages on the actual part of the game I'm working on. So we're still spawning items, or at least their names. So I'm going to comment that out now too. And I think that's everything. And of course, because I made the changes, everything disappears here. But that's fine. So let's move on to the character. First things first, I'm just going to get rid of all these meshes down here. And actually, before I do that, I want to see where I have these selected, if they're in prefabs, because I am going to make them meshes. So let's close down the icons. I'm going to open up mesh, and here we are in weapon. And I'm going to want these to be named the same. Now, so far, I have Salifi, Sword, and Morningstar. And you could make these prefabs as well. And the benefit of making a prefab is you can add your little offsets and everything else to it. If everything works perfectly right out of the box, I'd say just leave it as a mesh. And that's what I'm going to try for to start with. So let's go ahead and name the ones that I need. This is my Salifi. I need my Sword, which is the first one. And I need my Morningstar, and it's spelled just a little bit different. It was a small s. And I'm also going to want these paths. So I'm going to open up Mono Develop, go over to Game Settings, or Game Settings 2 now. I'm going to add another constant, and it's going to be Mesh, Melee Weapon Mesh Path. And it's going to be item mesh, I believe. Let me just look. So I'll slide this over, and let's just start taking a look here. So we're under item, right? Yeah, item, mesh, weapon, melee. Item, mesh, weapon, melee. All right. Let me just put this back to the regular size. And now I'll select them all and delete them. And I'm going to reassign this. And I also want to select to see where I'm getting this from. So I'm actually getting it from my prefab, which is okay for now. We're going to want to change that. But for now, we'll just leave it like that. If we start it up, we should get errors when we try to equip a weapon now. And I'll open up my inventory. There we go. So I'll just stop it, and we'll just go straight to where the error occurred. Alright, right here in my player character script, if we come up to the top, he's got a list of his inventory. So equip weapon. So it's taking in the value. We're calling hide weapons. We don't need to call this anymore because, well, we have no weapons to hide. So I'm just going to comment that out. The whole function. And then we come back and we take a look. If the equipped weapon equals null, it just returns. Else, if we go through and we're looking for the names. And of course these names have to match the names that we have in our item generator, which is another reason why we want to move this out into another file so we can reference it. Is it public here? Actually no, it's local right here. So yeah, we're going to want to move that out eventually. Let's go back into our player character. So it's checking to see if we have it, and it just sets it to active. So this is the code that we're going to want to change. And I'm just going to comment this out for now. Just for the people that have purchased the scripts and are following along, it's still there. They can just uncomment it. And we're going to want to create a function that actually loads up the proper mesh and puts it in the right spot. Now, where do we want to put this function? I've got one too many comments there. I don't really want it in the player character. I don't want him loading and unloading his own weapons, but just to keep things simple right now, this is actually where I am going to put it. So we're going to have to get his weapon mount point, which will be accessible here. And we're going to want to have a mesh. Now I'm just going to keep my meshes the same name as the actual weapon. So actually we could technically still use this. Actually we will still use this. We're going to just change what it does. We're going to create a string that it's going to use to use the resources load function with. So we'll come through here. Well, I guess the top will start. So we're going to say string with a small s. I'm just going to call it temp. And this is going to be equal to, and it's game settings, 2.melee weapon mesh path. And then I'm just going to concat onto it the actual name. So if the weapon is called a sword, we'll just concat onto it sword. And make sure you spell this right, which I didn't. And I'm just going to cut and paste this in for all the rest. And let's go like that. And Morningstar. Let me just check here. Yes, we are getting the name. Okay. And then at the bottom here, before I put my resource load function or command in, I am going to do a debug log. And I just want to see what temp is equal to, just to make sure everything's loading up okay. Now we do have a few other errors occurring now. So we're calling from our player character hide weapon mesh. What function is this in? This is in the awake. So I'll just comment that out. And here's where we're finding our weapon mount. I'm not sure if we actually need that anymore. I'll go through after and we'll take a look. So let's just go back in. I'm just going to hit clear and start it up. And we'll start. Okay, we'll open our inventory and our character panel. I'm going to move the inventory. I will start with the Sliffy. So item mesh weapon melee Sliffy. That's right. And the sword is right, and the Morningstar is right. Okay, so let's actually start grabbing the item and equipping it. I'm going to shrink down the functions that I'm not currently playing with. Alright. So we know that's working, so I'm just going to come right underneath it and make a game object. And I'm just going to call this mesh, all lowercase, and it's equal to instantiate, and I'm going to say as game object. And what we want to instantiate is resources dot load, and what we want is temp, and we're going to want to put it at the right spot, which is our weapon mount, which I believe I have up here. I'm not sure if we actually need this game meshes anymore either, but let's put it, parent it to our weapon mount. Whoops, that's the wrong line. I'm in the awake again. I thought I shrunk that. So I'm going to start off by saying mesh dot transform dot parent is equal to, and then we want to get the weapon mount and its transform. It's not accessible. I believe we opened it in base character. Let me see right here. Yep, weapon mount. We have all our mounts there that we need, or at least you should add the ones that you need. It's not showing up though, and it's because this class, or sorry, this method is static, and we're trying to access something that is not static. So we're not going to be able to do that. Let's just comment this line out. I actually see something else. We actually don't need this, since all we're doing is just looking to get the name and appending the name onto a string. We can get rid of this whole block and not even bother with creating a string here. All we really need to do is take this whole line, post it in here, and then just add on the name here. So you can either grab the value or do the equipment, either one. And I'm just going to grab that one. And that should work the same. This debug will no longer work because we don't have a variable temp. Just to make sure that it is actually working though, I am going to debug this out as we go along. And let's just take a look to see if this is actually loading the item up in our game world, and we'll figure out the transform in just a minute. So let's go ahead, we'll grab some items. We got a good mix, inventory, character panel. We'll start with the morning star. Let me clear this out. The variable mesh is assigned but is never used, and that's what we have right here. We're not doing anything with it yet, but let's go ahead and equip morning star. And it does go over. We are getting the message here of where it's going. And here it is right here. So it is showing up. We just got to parent it now. So let's stop that. And to get around the fact that this is a static method, but we're going to be trying to access the weapon mount, which is not static. For now, we're just going to make a really quick, dirty workaround that we will have to change later on, because we are going to be making this class static, because you're only ever going to have one player character in your game. So to do that, let's just make a private static game object. And I'm just going to call it WM for weapon mount. And then in my start function, I need the return type. I'm just going to say that WM is equal to my weapon mount. So now I do actually have a static function I can reference up here. And actually, while I'm here in my awake, this all has to do with that array of game objects that we used to use for our we had all the meshes there. We just turned them on and off. So we can actually just delete this whole thing. I'm just going to comment it out for the people that are still following along. And we're doing the whole class, so make sure you get all the parentheses. And I'm going to uncomment this. And its parent is now going to be wm.transform. And of course, to make sure it spawns in the right spot at the right rotation, we're going to say wm.transform.position to make sure it's in the right spot. And we want the right rotation, so wm.transform.rotation. That should do everything fine. Now let's go try this out. There's no errors on compiling, so we'll start this up. And we've got the weapon slot right here. And I'll open it up. I'm going to grab all the items. And we'll open up the character and inventory panel. And I'll just equip the axe. And there we go. We have the axe. Now we don't have it destroying the other ones. And let's quickly add that right now. Before we end this tutorial. So I'm going to come in. We'll shrink this down. Well, I was kind of hoping that'd shrink the whole class down, but it's not. That's fine. We don't need that opened up anymore. Alright, so we're going to come down here. I'm going to comment out my debug log line. And actually right before the debug log line, I'm going to do like we did before. Check to see if there's any children under this transform and delete them if there are. So I'm going to say for each. Let's do game object. Game object, and I'm just going to call it Geo. Actually, before we were just using a for loop, so let's just stick to what we're used to. We're just going to check to see if there's anything. If wm.transform.childCount is greater than 0, so if there is something there, destroy, and then the item we want, which will be wm.transform.getChild, and the index. And there should only ever be one thing here. So that should get rid of the old one. Missing a parenthesis, or parentheses. And I'll save that off. Everything looks fine. Now we are going to have probably some memory leaks here. But we can come back and test for all that and fix those up a little later on. So let's head back into Unity. And there's no errors, so let's see if it's actually going to destroy our old weapons for us. So we'll go ahead. We'll open these up. And of course I need my character and inventory panel. And let's go with the Sliffy first. So there we go, we got a Sliffy there. Now let's equip that Morning Star. And it cannot destroy. Okay. So let's go back in, and what we're actually grabbing, just make sure I quit Unity. I did. And I actually make this error quite a bit. What we're doing here is we're grabbing the transform, and what we really want is the game object. So just make sure that you're grabbing the game object. Otherwise you're trying to destroy the transform, and if anything depends on that transform, then it cannot be destroyed. So let's go ahead, we'll try this one more time. And again, we only get 2 different types, but we only have 3, so it's to be expected. Alright, so we've got my Morning Star. I'm going to equip the axe. And there we go. As you can see over here, we only have the Sliffy. And again, the Morning Star. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial. We should be coming up in 20 minutes now. In the next tutorial, I want to start... Well, I guess we should start creating our player character as a singleton or some sort of static class, so we can clean this up. And there's quite a bit of other things I wanted to do here. but one step at a time. So I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.